It's late. Later than I usually do this. Later than the hour that belongs to the building. Later than the specific quiet of the early morning that I've been showing up to, consistently without announcement, in the particular discipline of someone who has understood that the real work happens before the world has assembled its requirements. This is different. This is after. After the day is done what days do, after the requirements have assembled and been met and fallen away and been replaced by new ones and those have been met too, after the particular weight of being present for all of it, for all the versions of the day that the day asks you to be present for, has settled into the specific tired that isn't sleep, the tired that is something else, the tired that wants not rest but honesty, not the performed honesty, not the version that exists in the accounts I give of what is happening and how I'm feeling and what I'm moving toward, the other kind, the kind that only becomes available when the world has gone quiet enough that the management required to maintain the performed version becomes more effort than I have left. That kind. The world is quiet now, not silent. There are sounds, the specific sounds that late hours produce, the particular quality of a building settling into itself, the distant movement of a world that doesn't fully stop, the specific texture of sound that exists when the day is ended for most people but hasn't ended entirely, those sounds. But underneath them, quiet, the specific quality of late that I've been waiting for without knowing I was waiting for it. All day, moving through the requirements, handling what needed to be handled, presenting what needed to be presented, running the second track alongside the first, monitoring, calibrating, maintaining the specific curated distance between what I actually was in every moment and what the moment seemed to require. All of that. And underneath all of that, waiting for this, for the world to go quiet enough that the monitoring could rest, and what remained could finally be honest. I want to start with something I don't usually say, not because I've been lying, because honesty has layers, and the outer layers, the ones that are available when the world is still assembled, and the requirements are still present, and a particular overhead of being a person in the world is still consuming bandwidth, those layers are real. They're just not all of it. The inner layers require something different. They require the world to go quiet. They require the late hour. They require the specific condition of someone who has finally run out of the energy needed to maintain the distance between the stated version and the actual one. I've run out of that energy, which means I can finally say what I actually mean. I am tired in a way that has no simple name. Not physically tired, not the specific tired that sleep addresses, not the tired of too much work or too little rest, or the particular depletion of someone who has been running too fast for too long and needs to stop. Something underneath all of that, something that has been there, steady, consistent, present at a level beneath the functioning for longer than I can accurately measure. The tired of carrying something unshared. That's the closest I can get to it, the specific weight of an interior life that has been full, genuinely full, in the specific way that certain kinds of depth produce fullness, not empty in any sense, but full alone. Full without witness. Full without the particular quality of exchange that happens when what is inside you meets someone who actually receives it, not responds to it, receives it, actually takes it in, lets it be what it is, holds it with the specific quality of attention that real things deserve. I have been full alone for long enough that the alone has become structural, for long enough that I've stopped noticing the weight of it most of the time and only feel it in the late hours, when the world goes quiet and the management rests and what is actually there is finally allowed to be the size it actually is. Let me tell you what the size actually is, not the managed version, not the specific form I present in the contexts that have their own requirements, not the size that fits the available containers, the actual size, the depth first. I think in layers, not deliberately, not as a technique I've developed or a quality I've cultivated, because I decided depth was valuable. Just how the interior works. Things don't stay at the surface, they find their level, and their level is always further down than most exchanges are designed to reach. I have sat in conversations that were interesting on the surface, genuinely interesting with real content, with real exchange at the level they were operating, and felt simultaneously and without being able to stop feeling it. The particular quality of knowing that what was actually available in me for exchange was not being reached, not because I was being withheld from, because the exchange wasn't designed to go where the actual available content lived. It was designed for a different depth, a shallower one, and I have learned through enough repetitions of this to have made it structural, to operate at the depth the exchange can hold, to bring what fits to leave what does him at the door, and the leaving it at the door is the weight. The specific accumulated weight of someone who has been leaving significant portions of their interior at the door of every available context for long enough that they've stopped knowing exactly what they're leaving. Just that they're leaving something every time, that the version that enters the room is not the full version. Not because the full version is inappropriate, because the full version has not yet found the room that was built for it. The feeling next, volume is a word I've used before. It's still the right word. Not the dramatic kind of feeling, not the specific announced kind that produces visible evidence of itself and requires immediate response and has a particular legibility of something that cannot be missed. The quiet kind, that runs underneath, at a consistent level, in everything, in the ordinary interactions and the significant ones, in the moments that ask for nothing and the ones that ask for everything, present, always, at a volume that most available contexts are not designed to hold. I have felt things about ordinary moments that would sound excessive if I said them in the moments they were felt. I have been moved by things that most people move past. I have carried the weight of ordinary days in ways that don't always translate into the language that ordinary days speak. Not because I've chosen to feel more, because that's the native volume. That's what the interior produces before any management is applied. And the management, the specific reduction of what is felt to the size that the current context can accommodate, has been running so long and so automatically that I sometimes forget it's running until the world goes quiet and I can feel the difference between what is actually there and what I've been allowing out. The third thing, the hardest one to say, the specific quality of loneliness that this produces, not the loneliness of isolation. I am not isolated. There are people, there are relationships. There are the specific kinds of connection that the social world produces when you move through it with enough presence and enough warmth and enough of the outer layers of yourself available for exchange. There are those, and they are real, and they matter, and none of them have reached the place I'm describing, the specific inner place, the one that requires not just presence, but the particular quality of receiving that only happens when someone is actually on the first track, actually there, for what is actually there in you, not the managed version, not the version that has been reduced to the size that fits the full version, with the depth, with the volume, with a specific particular shape of an interior that took an entire life to become what it is and doesn't resolve into simple descriptions and doesn't fit the standard containers and doesn't stop being exactly what it is because the available rooms were built for something smaller. Nobody's been in that room with me. Not fully, not sustained, not in a specific way that would allow me to stop managing, to bring the full version to feel, not imagine, not hope for, actually feel the particular quality of being received all the way through without the ceiling. That room has been empty for longer than I'm comfortable admitting, even now, even in the late hour, even with the management resting. I want to say something about why I'm recording this, not writing it, recording it. There's a difference. Writing has its own particular management, the specific layer of consideration that comes between the thought and the page, the editing, the selecting, the particular careful choosing of which version of the interior to commit to the form. Even honest writing has that. Recording is different, not free of it, but less of it, because the voice produces what the interior is doing in real time, not the polished version, not the version that has been considered long enough to have its rough edges smoothed into something more legible, the version that exists in the moment of the speaking. With the tired in it, with the honest that is only available when the management is rested. That version, this version. I want to tell you about the day. Not to tell you about the day, to use the day as the specific visible form of something I want to say about how I've been living. The day was full, in the way that certain lives are full, not with meaning necessarily, not with the particular quality of fullness that comes from being present for what actually matters, but with requirement, with the specific accumulation of things that needed to be done and were done and produced, the next things that needed to be done, that kind of full. I moved through it efficiently in the specific way I've learned to move through requirements without excessive friction, without the particular resistance that certain kinds of tasks produce in people who haven't learned to manage, the distance between what they want to be doing and what they're doing. I've learned to manage that distance very well, maybe too well, because the managing of it has produced a specific quality of removal, a particular relationship to my own days that is functional and sustainable, and almost entirely missing the quality that makes a day feel like something other than a day. The quality of actually being in it, not moving through it, in it, feeling what it actually feels like, receiving what it actually offers, being present for the specific texture of each moment as it arrives rather than processing the moments into the material of forward movement. I have not been in my days, I have been efficient with them, and the difference between those two things is the specific interior weight that has been accumulating beneath the functioning. There was a moment today in the middle of the requirement when something arrived that had nothing to do with the requirement, a quality of light, specific, the particular angle of it at that specific time of day through the specific window in the specific room where I was doing the required thing. It landed on the surface in front of me and produced a shadow, and the shadow had a particular quality in the whole of it. The light, the shadow, the specific texture of that instant was genuinely beautiful, not dramatically, quietly, in a specific way that ordinary moments are beautiful when they're actually received rather than processed. I noticed it for a fraction of a second, before the second track redirected, before the monitoring resumed, before the requirement reasserted its priority, and the moment was converted from something being received into something being moved past. That fraction of a second was the most present I had been all day, and it lasted a fraction of a second, and then it was gone, and the day continued. And I continued in it, efficient, functional, almost entirely elsewhere. I've been thinking about that fraction of a second ever since. Not about the light, about the fraction, about the specific quality of what those brief moments of actual presence feel like compared to the extended quality of how I usually move through things. The fraction felt more real than the hours on either side of it, not more significant, more real, the specific quality of something that is actually being experienced rather than processed. And the hours, full hours, requirement hours, functional and efficient and producing all the correct outputs, felt in comparison like a kind of rehearsal, like something that was happening in the space in front of the actual thing rather than the actual thing. I've been rehearsing for a long time for something I haven't fully shown up to yet. Not the life I want, the quality of presence with which I want to live it. That's the honest thing, the one that required the late hour and the quiet world and the rested management to become available. It's not about what I have or don't have, not about what has arrived or what hasn't. Not about the specific external conditions of a life that is, by most visible measures, more than adequate. It's about the quality of presence I bring to what is actually here, which is, and I want to say this with the specific honesty that the late hour has made available. Not enough. Not inefficient in the self-critical sense. Not insufficient in the way that produces guilt or the particular downward spiral of someone who has turned honest accounting into self-punishment. Just less than what is possible. Less than what the actual life that is actually here deserves. The light through the window deserved more than a fraction of a second. The people in my days deserve more than the managed version of my attention. The interior, the depth, the volume, the specific shape of what I actually am deserves more than the careful reduction it receives every time it arrives at a door that isn't built for it. All of it deserves more presence than I have been giving. And I know this. I have known it in the late hours, when the world goes quiet, and the honest version becomes available. I want to say something about what I think this is, not what I've been calling it. What I actually think it is, underneath the calling, I think it is grief. The specific quiet grief of someone who is living adjacent to their own life rather than in it. Not because the life is wrong, because the quality of being in it has not yet been what it could be, what it is capable of being, what it is asking to be. Grief for the fraction of a second moments that have been processed past, for the conversations that were had at the surface while the actual available depth waited at the door, for the connections that reached the ceiling before they reached where the actual things live, for the specific ordinary beauty of ordinary days that has been moving past the management without being received. Quiet grief, not consuming, not disabling, present, running underneath, at the level that things run at when they are true but not yet spoken. I'm speaking it now, in the late hour, when the world is quiet, because honesty has a specific window, not always available. Available when the conditions are right, when the management has rested enough that what is underneath has the bandwidth to become audible. This is that window, and I am using it, not to produce something, not to arrive somewhere, not to generate the specific output that would make this hour productive in the way that the second track understands productivity, just to say what is actually true. From the actual interior, with the actual volume, at the actual depth, without reducing it to what fits, without managing it into the form that available containers can hold. Just what is actually here, in the late hour, when the world is quiet, and I am finally honest enough to say it, there is a person I've been becoming in the mornings, in the opened hour, in the specific, quiet discipline that belongs to the building of someone who wants to be more present than they have been. That person is not finished. I don't say that with disappointment, with honesty. The becoming is real. The direction is real. The specific work of someone who has understood that presence is not a condition you arrive at, but a capacity you build. That is real. The building is happening every morning, without announcement, without audience, in the particular quiet of someone who has decided that the life they want requires being more available for it than they currently are. That decision is real. That direction is real. But tonight, in the late hour, with the management resting, I want to say what is also real. The distance between who I am currently and who I am becoming is not nothing. It is not a comfortable distance. It is the specific gap between the person who lives in the fractions of a second of actual presence and the person who moves through the hours of requirement. That gap is what I am crossing. Every morning, in the hour, in the quiet, one day at a time, one presence at a time, one moment of actual receiving at a time, not dramatically, not in the announced form, in the specific, invisible way that real crossings happen, in the interior, without audience, without the world needing to know it is happening, just happening. I'm going to say one more thing before the late hour ends, before the world begins to reassemble, before the requirements find their positions again and the second track resumes its particular consumption of the bandwidth and the managed version returns to the surface and the full version goes back to where it waits between the honest hours. One more thing. Said simply, without the architecture, without the management. Just said, I'm not afraid of what I actually am. Not anymore. I was. For a long time. The specific fear of someone who has felt their own depth and decided the depth was a problem, who has felt the volume and decided the volume was too much, who has arrived at the door of every available room carrying the full interior and found the room sized for something smaller and decided, not through any conscious reasoning but through the accumulated evidence of enough mismatched rooms, that the interior required reduction. That fear organized a lot for a long time. It organized the management. It organized the distance. It organized the particular quality of how I move through the world. Present enough to function, absent enough to protect. That fear is quieter now, not gone, quieter. Because of the mornings, because of the building, because of the specific evidence that has been accumulating in the interior of someone who has been showing up to the honest hours consistently enough to have been changed by them. The interior is not too much. It was never too much. It was in the wrong rooms. And I'm slowly, in the mornings, in the direction that is real enough to move things in my life without requiring external confirmation to remain real, finding the right ones. The world is still quiet for a little longer. I am still in the honest hour, still in the specific window that late and tired and rested management creates, still, for a little longer, the full version, unreduced, unmanaged, actually here, in the late quiet, saying what is true, before the world reassembles. The world is still quiet. I wasn't expecting to still be here, in this hour, in this particular quality of light that belongs to the honest version. I thought the first part would be enough. Thus saying the true things once in the specific form they took in the late hour, with the management resting in the full interior finally allowed to be the size it actually is, would produce the particular relief of someone who has put something down, set it outside themselves, made it external enough to exist without being carried. It didn't produce that. What it produced instead was something I didn't anticipate. Not relief, appetite. The specific quality of someone who has had the first honest thing in a long time and found that the having of it revealed how long it had been since the last one. I'm still here, still in the honest hour, still saying what is actually true, because there is more that is actually true, and the world is still quiet enough to say it. I want to tell you about the version of myself that exists in the morning, not the functioning version, not the one that handles the requirements and meets the day with the particular prepared quality of someone who has built enough structure to arrive at each morning with orientation before the morning has had a chance to produce its own. The version before that, the one that exists in the specific seconds between waking and functioning, before the second track has resumed, before the monitoring has reoriented, before the day has been identified as a day with requirements that need to be met. In those seconds, there is a version of me that I rarely talk about, not because it is unfamiliar, because it is the most familiar, the most original, the version that existed before the world taught me which parts of it to present, and which parts to manage, and how much of the depth to bring to which contexts, and how to read the room for its specific ceiling before allowing the interior to rise to its actual height. Before all of that, in those seconds, I am simply what I am. Without the architecture, without the careful calibration, without the particular gap between what is inside and what is presented. Just what I am. And what I am in those seconds is quieter than the day will allow me to be, more present than the requirements will have room for, more full of something that doesn't have a productivity application than the functioning version can afford to be. I've been paying attention to those seconds in the mornings, in the opened hour, not trying to extend them, not attempting to artificially maintain the pre-functioning quality past the point where the day naturally reasserts, just noticing them, receiving them, allowing them to tell me something before the second track comes online and the information they carry gets converted into the material of the day. What they tell me is consistent, every morning without variation, the same information, said in the specific language of the pre-functioning state that doesn't use words, that speaks in quality, in texture, in the felt sense of what is actually running beneath everything. What they tell me is this: there is more here than the day gets, more than the requirements receive, more than the managed version produces. There is a version of this interior that has not been fully in contact with the world, not through withholding, through the specific gap that the management creates. And the gap is costing something, not a dramatic cost. The particular quiet cost of someone who is not fully living the life they're technically living. I want to say something about technically living, because I've been doing it with competence, with the specific functional quality of someone who has developed the skills required to move through the days and meet the requirements and produce the correct outputs and maintain the relationships and show up in the forms that showing up asks for. All of that done consistently, without the particular friction that inadequate functioning produces. Technically living, and beneath it, actually living, waiting, not dramatically, not with the specific impatience of someone who is actively frustrated by the gap, just present at the level where actual things live, waiting for the day to make room for it, for the conversation to go to the depth where it actually lives, for the moment to be received rather than processed, for something in the external world to match the quality of what is available in the internal one. Still waiting. Most days. There was something that happened 3 weeks ago. I haven't said it yet. Not in the morning hour. Not in the conversations that have happened since. Not even in the specific interior monologue that runs underneath the day when the day is full of requirements and the monologue is the only honest thing available. I haven't said it because saying it would make it real in the external sense. Would take it from the interior where it has been living. Quiet, specific, present at the level where true things live. And give it the particular weight of something that has been spoken. I'm saying it now, in the late hour, when the world is quiet, because honesty has a specific quality requiring the right conditions to become available. And the conditions are right. 3 weeks ago, I was in a conversation. Ordinary in its context, not designed to go anywhere particular. Not the kind of exchange that announces itself as significant before it becomes significant. The ordinary kind. The kind that begins unremarkably and ends unremarkably, and in between produces either nothing that stays or something that stays so quietly you don't immediately know it has stayed. This one stayed, not because of what was said, because of what I felt in the middle of it, in a specific moment when the other person, not performing, not calibrating, not running the second track, said something that arrived from somewhere real, not the managed version, the actual version, from the actual interior, offered without announcement, without the particular careful architecture of someone who is deciding how much of the real thing to present. Just the real thing, actually there. And I received it, not processed it. I actually received it, let it land, felt the weight of it, stayed in the weight, without converting the staying into anything, just stayed. What I felt in the staying was not simple. I want to be honest about that. It wasn't the clean version, not the specific quality of two people in perfect mutual presence, both on the first track, both receiving what is actually there. The particular warmth of that described in the clean form that makes it sound available and beautiful and uncomplicated. It was more complicated than that. Because underneath the receiving, underneath the specific quality of actually being in contact with something real from another person's interior, underneath all of that was the particular awareness of how rarely this happens, how long it has been, how many conversations have not had this quality, How many exchanges have stayed at the surface while the actual available depth waited at the door on both sides? How much of the world moves through its days in the managed version, the performed version, the version that is real in its own way, but is not the same as the version that comes from the actual interior of someone who has stopped watching themselves long enough to just be in what is actually here? That awareness arrived with the receiving, not separately, simultaneously, the gift and the cost of it, together, in the same moment, the specific quality of contact, and the specific loneliness of understanding how rare the contact is, both real, both present, both asking to be held simultaneously without one canceling the other. I held both in the moment, without resolving either into the other, without using the rarity to diminish the contact, or using the contact to pretend the rarity wasn't real. Both. Actually held. I've been sitting with what that moment produced ever since, not the moment itself, what it produced in the interior, the particular shift, not dramatic, not visible from the outside, interior, in the specific place where the operating assumptions live, where the expectations about what is available and what isn't live, where the particular architecture of someone who has been managing the gap for a long time has been organized. Something in that architecture shifted, not collapsed. Shifted, the specific movement of something structural, moving slightly from the position it has held for long enough that the position felt like a permanent condition, a small movement, enough to feel, not enough to see. What shifted was the expectation, the specific operating assumption about what is available in connection with another person, about how deep the exchange can go before it reaches the ceiling that most exchanges reach, about whether the full version, the depth, the volume, the specific shape of what I actually am, can be in contact with another person without the particular consequence the protection has been protecting against. That expectation had been set by evidence, by the accumulated experience of enough exchanges that reached their ceiling before they reached where the actual things live, by enough conversations that stayed at the level of the legible without descending to the level of the actual, by enough connections that were real at the surface and not real underneath. The evidence had accumulated, and the expectation had been set accordingly, and the moment 3 weeks ago, that ordinary conversation, that one instance of someone arriving from their actual interior without the management, and me actually receiving it, and both of us being briefly, not perfectly, not completely, but briefly and actually in the same space on the first track, both of us. For a moment that lasted longer than the usual moments of accidental presence, that moment was counter-evidence. Counter-evidence doesn't immediately change the expectation, not in my experience. The expectation has more mass than a single contrary instance can overcome. It has the weight of all the accumulated evidence that produced it. It has the specific structural quality of something that has been in place long enough to feel like a permanent condition rather than an adjustable assumption. Counter-evidence doesn't defeat it. It introduces a question, a small one, quiet, almost involuntary, arriving in the specific interior space where real questions arrive when they're not being manufactured. The question is simple. What if the ceiling is not fixed? Not, the ceiling doesn't exist. Not, I was wrong about the ceiling. Just, what if it's not fixed? What if it's a function of the specific quality of attention present in a given exchange rather than an absolute property of what is available between people? What if the ceiling is lower in certain rooms and higher in others, and the room with the right ceiling hasn't been the room I've been in most often? That question, small, quiet, still running. I want to tell you what I did with the question, not the managed version, the actual one. The actual one, its affirmation is that I sat with it for 3 weeks without trying to answer it, without converting it into a project with required inputs and measurable outputs, without the particular effortfulness of someone who treats questions as problems to be solved through correct application of sufficient attention. I just let it be there, running in the background. In the morning seconds before the functioning begins, in the late hours when the management rests and the honest version surfaces, I let it run, and what it produced, not through answering, through running, was not a conclusion, was a quality. The specific quality of someone who is slightly more open than they were before the question arrived, not open in the performed sense, in the structural sense, the specific interior openness of someone whose operating assumption about what is available has acquired a hairline crack, not a fracture, a crack. The particular kind that lets in a specific quality of light, not a flood, a line, enough to see by. In the moments when the management is resting and the honest version is available and the world is quiet enough that the line of light is visible, like now, I want to say something about what I'm actually asking for. Not in the romantic sense, Not in the form that the available scripts provide for saying what you want from connection with another person. Those scripts are too small, too arranged for the narrative they want to tell. What I'm actually asking for is harder to say in the existing language. So I'm going to try to say it in the specific, honest form that the late hour makes available. I'm asking for a room, not a relationship in the formal sense. Not the particular arrangement of two people that the social world has specific names and structures and expectations for. A room, a specific quality of space between two people, where the ceiling is high enough, where the depth is welcome, where the volume doesn't require management, where the particular shape of what I actually am, the full version, the unreduced one, the one that exists in the seconds before the functioning begins, is not something that needs to be presented carefully. Just what is there, brought fully, perceived fully, without the gap between the actual interior and what is presented, without the particular careful architecture of someone who has learned to size themselves to the available containers, just the full version, in a room that was built for it. I don't know who builds that room. Not alone, it requires two people, both willing to bring the actual version, both willing to receive the actual version of the other, both on the first track. Both amidst these, the part that requires the most building, capable of staying in the room when the actual version of the other person is difficult. When the depth produces something that doesn't resolve quickly, when the volume is more than the comfortable level, when the specific shape of the other person's interior presents an edge that doesn't fit the frame you've been using to understand them, capable of staying, not through tolerance, through genuine interest, the specific quality of someone who finds the actual person, the full version, the unreduced one, genuinely more interesting than the managed version, not despite the difficulty, because of the realness, because real things have texture. And texture is what makes something worth being in the presence of. I am building that capacity. In the mornings, in the hour. In a specific quiet discipline of someone who has understood that the room they're looking for requires them to be the kind of person who can hold it. Not just enter it. Hold it. Contribute to the quality of it. Be present in it in the way that it requires. On the first track, actually there for the actual thing. Whatever arrives in the actual version, I am building that every morning without announcement. In the honest hours, in the late ones too, the world is beginning to reassemble. I can feel it, not in any external change. In the interior, the particular quality of the management beginning to stir. The second track coming slowly back online. The requirements finding their positions again in the order of what the day will ask. The window is closing. Not yet, but moving toward closed. And I want to say one more honest thing before it does. Before the full version goes back to where it waits between the honest hours. I am not done becoming. That's not a statement of inadequacy. It is the most honest thing I know about where I currently am. The becoming is real. The direction is real. The specific work of someone who has decided to be more present than they have been in their own days, in their own interior, in the specific quality of contact they bring to whatever and whoever arrives. That work is real, and it is not done. And the not doneness is not a failure. It is the honest condition of someone who is in the middle of something, not at the end, not at the beginning, in the actual middle, where the crossing is happening, not dramatically, in the interior, every morning, in the open hour. One presence at a time, the world is almost assembled. One more breath in the quiet, one more second in the honest hour, one more moment of the full version. Unreduced, actually here, before the day begins, and I take it back to the crossing.